Hi guys, sorry I'm back again. The Facebook Live doesn't seem to be playing ball with me tonight. Um, so start again. I seem to be having some sort of internet connection problems, and I literally just delivered like 36 minutes of live stream, and none of it was broadcast to you, so I apologize for that. But these things do happen with, I suppose, free services. I'll wait for people to join in again. Oh my god, it's been a good practice run. Let's just share this into the event again. It's actually interesting to, one of the issues around Facebook Live is that you don't get the URL up front for sharing. So Eva, I literally delivered 36 minutes worth of live stream before I realized that it wasn't actually streaming live, even though Facebook was telling me that I was live on my phone. So I've had a good practice run in this talk now. So I know that I can deliver it even better. So apologies for being late, but look, Facebook t-shirt as well on today. Bad, I'm gonna have to chuck this in the bin today, but I suppose that's what you pay for when you're using a free service, right? And the other issue about Facebook Lives is that you don't have a link to share with people, so we have to sort of say, oh, it's going to be happening in the design thinking group and so on. But so, like I say, I've already been delivering this for 36 minutes, so I'll go back from the top. Today I'm talking about growth and applying design thinking to growth of businesses. And so far I've talked about people, designing for systems, innovation, products, money, and growth. Growth is the final sixth stage of every business in the way that we look from design thinking perspective. Why is that? Because growth is the outcome or output of all those previous design thinking exercises and aspects, and its success result of doing those correctly. There is certainly a way in which we can build and grow businesses in a way that we look to grow first without having any of the products, people, etc. But the risk and downside of that approach is, especially in the business-to-business environment, is that if we sell a product to, let's say, Vodafone as a client, there is a huge chance that selling just to one client will cause us to build products that are overly catered and tailored towards that one client. And then subsequently selling and growing to other clients will mean that the product is overly configured towards one client, and we don't have the strategic maneuvering opportunity to actually sell to multiple clients. I've seen it in the past with both startups and corporate sort of incubators, where they have used salespeople up front who will tailor their sales spiel to one particular client to win the sale, and sell in something overly customized, and then down the months the business has to build a product that's more generically appealing to multiple clients, because just having one client isn't enough to grow a big business. And then the business starts realizing that, oh, the complexity of re-engineering the product offering, the innovation, the systems, even regrowing the team is very hard. or raising the money for something that isn't really naturally growing. So growth in design thinking is really a compound output of people, systems, innovation, products, and money inputs and outputs. And growth typically in businesses will be the sales and marketing side of things. But sales and marketing are really only relevant at a point where we have a product market fit. The product market fit requires us to know who we are targeting, which is people. So we can't really start anything before knowing the people. And to target those people, we need to have systems and processes in which we're going to reach out to those people. And when we do reach out to those people, we need to understand what sort of innovative thing is going to encapsulate their mind and imagination to get them to be interested in our product and our service. And really, we're going to have to know what price point to offer it at to actually have a sale. So growth, unless you're extremely lucky, will not happen unless you really married up your thinking across people, systems, innovation, products, and money side of things. And so the interesting aspect of growth is that it's really a psychologically driven thing, just like everything else, really, and it's subject to applying across the entire life cycle. So customer life cycle has 8 stages to it. The first stage is awareness. Awareness is applicable to the situation where your customer, your target person that you're looking to sell to, does not know about existence of your company or your product. So the first aspect of growth is, how are you going to make people aware that you exist? That's the first aspect of growth. And it's not necessarily a trivial thing. Again, it requires you to know upfront and empathize with who your target audience is, why they would be interested in your product, what's the innovative thing, and how you're going to get there. So to raise awareness of your product requires that insight. And awareness is the stage that takes a person from not knowing anything about your product or service or business to a point where they are intrigued to actually start considering this. There's 2 situations where person can be in this stage. They might have been in a situation where they're looking for something like this, but they weren't aware of the existence of that sort of offering. So they've been consciously cognizant that they need something, but they haven't known how to look for it, or they didn't know that they needed it, but when they discovered it, they started making their own pictures and reasons and stories as to why they need that. It's like right now I have this sort of thing that I'm building in my mind as to like how I need, the reasons why I need this new type of camera that's for Facebook Lives and so on. And I'm sort of building my own self, what's the word? I'm trying to prove it to myself that I need to buy this. So awareness is the first stage. Then, so once the person is aware that something exists and they're intrigued on usually emotional level, they're intrigued by the offering. Usually storytelling works here very well to entertain, entice, attract attention and so on. They will then have a propensity to go into researching more about that product or service. So they'll drill into deeper information about it. And Nowadays, people expect to know a lot about the product or a service. Example that comes to mind immediately is that if you're going to a holiday with your family and you want to go to Mexico, you don't want to just book a hotel. You want to know whether that hotel has sauna, whether that hotel has a nice big swimming pool. Is the swimming pool Has the swimming pool got that endless view? Uh, what kind of food is served there? What's nearby from the hotel? So this research stage can go quite far into depths of information, and people will want to be reassured on a more logical level that this is valuable offering, uh, compared to Will saying infinity pool. Yeah, infinity pool compared to regular pool is perceived by customers as much more valuable than regular pool. And actually, it takes a lot more other things to actually have the situation where you can even build as a product, build an infinity pool. We'll talk about this, like why products then impact on growth. I somewhat mentioned this already anyway, but so research phase is where the customer really drills into the information about what is this thing that they became aware of. After that, they'll say like, okay, let's say in the research phase they'll find out everything and it all makes logical sense and so on, but the price is pretty high, or they might perceive it to be pretty high. Then they'll go into comparison phase, where they will start comparing this offer. What's an infinity pool? Infinity pool, Eva, is the one where you feel like the pool is connected to the seaside. When you look from the side of the pool, it feels like it goes into the sea, right? As opposed to having those kind of stone edges, right? So the water has to flow over the pool, and view a pool with an endless view, exactly. So so then the customer will go, or potential customer, at this point the people are still users, so the user will go into the comparison mode. So they'll say like, oh, this has got endless pool, it's got beautiful massage therapists and massage facilities and cool food and nearby facilities, all sorts of things, but the price seems or feels quite high. I'm going to go for comparison and see maybe I can get something even more for less of a price, or more for the same price, and so on, or maybe something a little bit less for a less of a price, and so on. So people will go into comparison mode, and that's at that point your product and offering needs to be better than the comparative offerings. And so if they're satisfied with their comparison, they will then go into selection mode and start really understanding the reasons why they're selecting this and what they want from you, really, from their perspective. And really all these four stages are user stages. So people are users when they just become aware, research, compare, and make that selection, conscious selection, where they say, okay, I have my own cognitive reasoning as to why I'm going for this option. At that point, the user starts moving from user to a customer, in which stage they go into purchase intent or purchase stage. So you can even purchase free services by the virtue that you're giving away your personal information, usually to sign up for free things. And we spoke about freemium models in the business, in the money side of things in the previous session that I delivered. But so even when people are signing up for free, they're giving away their valuable information for a promise of a good experience within that free service. Usually that good experience isn't really available until you sign up. This is why a lot of products, digital products, have to offer some sort of skip purchase, skip registration, to kind of experience it first, so that you then are comfortable that your experience is suited to what your expectations are, so that then you really register for the service. So after the purchase, but typically purchase is where the user parts with cash and becomes a customer. So that all these stages have to be designed: awareness, research, comparison, selection, purchase, and then experience. Then then the customer gets to experience the product, what's typically seen as product. But really, in design thinking, all these stages are part of the product, and they all drive growth. If you don't have awareness, you will not have growth. If you don't support the research phase, you won't have growth. People will drop out. If you don't compare well to the rest of the market, preferably with hugely more value added, people will drop out. If you don't drive people to make that selection, people will drop out. They'll say, I'll do this later. And then if you don't make it easy for people to purchase, people will drop out. Needless to say, experience, which is an emotional aspect of business, which is the core product, is only then properly usable after customers purchase the product. And that experience needs to be beautifully designed for them to really start creating a very emotional connection with the product and service, to a point where it becomes a habitual thing for them to use, love, that adds value to their life, that really becomes something that they can't live without, effectively. I'm thinking of my iPhone at the moment. I use it all the time for all sorts of things. Right now, I wouldn't be able to deliver this live session to you without it. So it's very, very, very core experiential product in my life. If people are really in love with the product, and I use the word love with intention there, they'll become loyal. They'll use it all the time. That all requires designing using all these cognitive understandings of who the humans are. And the loyalty then leads into advocacy. So one of the things that I was talking about in my first session that wasn't actually streaming, but it's very, very powerful statement, I think, is that typically business advisors will tell you that to grow a business, you need a huge sales force and a marketing effort. Sales, mostly. But what I submit to you is that companies like Apple, Tesla, Airbnb, Google, Facebook, Twitter, etc., they didn't actually have any sales force. For most part, they don't have any sales force for the B2C offering that they have. Why? Because their products, their people, systems, innovation, products, and the money side of things are so well thought through that they don't need a sales force to drive the growth of business. Growth is an output, it's a compound outcome of good design thinking across all those 5 sections. I didn't know this until recently, where Chobani yogurt, which has always been my kind of big sort of darling example of business success, the founder spoke about the fact that he realized after 2 years spent designing the actual product pot and everything, that when he put it into the stores, it was just flying off the shelves, and he realized growth and sales is not going to be an issue here. It's more around the systems that they need to put in place to be able to generate and produce enough of the yogurt that will supply this demand that they've generated naturally through the focus on what do people want, where is the gap in the market, how do we systematize and create a product that has enough innovation. Certainly in the American market there was none of this Greek yogurt thing, but he still designed a really nice pot and really tasty yogurt that people really loved, and then sold it into the market, and the growth was just a subsequent consequence off the back of that good thinking. Same is the case with Airbnb, with Apple, with Tesla, with Facebook, However much you hate Facebook, quote unquote, it's actually a service that you use all the time. So these things just work there enough. And you can say they could always be improved. And that's the stuff that need to be improving on, as opposed to the sales side, which is going to drive in people on this sort of hard bargain. And so to create an experience that people love so much that they become loyal of and then become advocates of, where you can't really stop people when the people have nice yogurt and they really love it, they love it to such an extent that it becomes part of their identity, and then they want to tell the world about it because it's them. That product becomes part of who they are. Um, I'm not ashamed to be seen with this iPad, Apple iPad. I would not be so much bragging if I had a Microsoft book thing, whatever it's called. I can't even remember it. So it's just this is very, very huge thing, and the amount of design thinking and design that's gone into this product. Yeah, nobody sold this to me. I sold this to myself. Okay, that's how you create growth, true growth, where you don't have to be employing hordes of salespeople to grow your business and your product offering, product sales, because the customers are the sales force. Similarly, this happens with Tough Mudder, which is again a proposition that is so socially baked and enabled that people love it so much that they share it on Facebook and tag themselves in pictures, and then other people become aware of it. Yeah, it goes back to awareness, because advocacy drives awareness. If you want to make people aware of your product, you have to identify the core die-hard fans of this kind of offer who will become these kind of loyal fanatics of your product, so that they can start dispersing into their social networks the existence of this product, either actively or passively. Just by the fact that I'm seen with this T-shirt, I might not be promoting and going, buy this T-shirt, buy this T-shirt. Just the fact that I'm wearing it, you might say, like, where did you get that T-shirt from? Now, this one just happens to be given to me for free from Facebook Hack Day, but I might have bought this, and then I would be effectively obliged to, if you ask me, I'd be effectively obliged to tell you where to at least look for it and research it for yourself. So ever saying, but you still have to let people know it exists. Yeah, the question here, and it's a design thinking challenge of who's your target market and where do they reside. Now, this is one thing that becomes very tricky for some businesses that are targeting a disparate groups of people. So if you are looking to sell yogurt, for example, you can say, well, people that buy yogurt hang around in supermarkets, right? In shops. You don't buy yogurt from the forest, right? To buy yogurt from the forest, you have to pick fruits and then make it yourself at home. So the people who buy yogurt hang around in supermarkets. This is the power of these kind of shopping malls and so on, because they congregate people into places where you can raise awareness about your product. And the best way to raise awareness of your product is to create these die-hard fans and then drive loyalty and advocacy, so that people who are already loyal and loyal customers who are happy to talk about the product start doing that to the other target audience. Please ask me questions if you have any at this stage. The overarching message that I want to give in this whole session really is that the reason why I was talking about people, systems, innovation, products, and money is because those things generate growth. You don't need salespeople in a business that's really well designed, which people want so much that they will just come to you to buy that. Marketing, companies that are well designed, they don't do marketing where they say on their advertising and on their like messaging, they don't do things like take 20% off today or this week only, and those kind of drivers, right, that are like driving this sort of rarity thing. They don't do that. Why don't they do that? Because their products are so well designed that they don't need to be dropping prices. The price point can only go up. And so, therefore, in the marketing realm, a well designed company will be driving more of this aspirational awareness side of things so that people can talk more about the product. They will drive the advocacy aspect of their products rather than this sort of like close the people on more purchase, the kind of salesy tone. It might feel and sound like counterintuitive, but long term, certainly it's very, very, very wise approach. So any growth hacks that you hear about are typically tailored towards immediate incremental, and what I mean by incremental is like percentage point drivers of conversion rates across these steps. But really, the growth hacks never really address the holistic offering of the business across the whole life cycle and across these kind of 6 areas. And what I submit to you all the time is that if you don't design all those 6 areas, you are not going to get growth. And growth is a natural outcome of good design at all these previous stages. Now, the other aspect, it just kind of escaped my mind, but I delivered it in my original thing that didn't go live. Oh yeah, with regards to the the stock market, there is the notion, I keep talking about this, and in design, we're always designing the experience. Experience is the product. Experience, this is a good question from Abdul coming in. How do you work out the value of your offering? Do you just look at competitions and price accordingly? This is a good question, and it was somewhat, I think, covered in my money previous session around money, but the price point, picking the price point depends on the target market. I was talking about this in my previous session actually. So the price point, yes, you can use the comparison aspect. So you can compare the market and say, well, okay, these guys are selling it for £10, therefore we should come in at either £10 or £9. The thing is that that's just competing on price. It's not really value adding. With design thinking, we're looking to add extra value to, instead of charging £10, we want to charge £15 and have a reason why why our offering is worth £15, and actually make people really advocates of that. Also with price, I was talking about earlier on that if we're selling to it's a relative thing. So if we're selling if we say our product costs £20,000, to most of us in this stream, that's a lot of money. £20,000 is like something that I'd have to really think about for a while. Research and compare and think about my selection as to whether I'm doing the right thing. But to some sort of billionaire, they'll spend out on a lunch £20,000. It's nothing. The best thing you could do is up the price, because a billionaire will say, like, I don't buy lunches that are not costing at least £1,000. That's my lifestyle, because I don't really know what else to spend my money on. So it's really a relative thing compared to the target audience's spending power. And so price point is very important, and it certainly determines the level of purchasing that we will see in the customer life cycle, and then that has a knock-on effect on growth. Because you see a lot of these situations arise where companies drive a lot of traffic, and I was speaking originally about this in terms of a lot of companies will drive these and drive the vanity metrics, the Facebook likes, YouTube views, Instagram likes, these kind of things. Those metrics mean nothing really in the long term for most part. Why? Because they're very easy to generate. They're often created by bots. They don't require users necessarily to be signed into services to be generated, and they really don't mean much. So if you're optimizing your growth, and growth requires measuring upfront to know whether it's working or not. So if you're optimizing your growth for vanity metrics, then that's what you're going to get more vanity metrics conversions. But if you target your growth towards upping real KPIs, key performance indicators, like let's say money or engagement, like so for example on Facebook, one of the core key performance indicators is the time spent on the site. This is what Mark Zuckerberg formerly said to all his employees. The core key performance indicator that we want on Facebook is the time spent on the site. And that's why you see a lot of people that use Facebook, they're 50% of their day they're on Facebook. Why? Because Facebook has been designed that way. It doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen by coincidence. So that's very important. What are we measuring as growth? And a lot of growth hackers will be driving traffic into the business, which potentially raises awareness, but actually if the subsequent steps in the customer lifecycle are broken, all that traffic is going to be wasted, and raising loads of awareness around broken product and experience is the fastest way to kill a business. So the last thing you want to do is put a lot of effort into sales and marketing of something that is broken down the stream, because you're going to create a lot of very, very angry customers who will then effectively kill your business before it's even made. And so just going back to the point around experiences, the product experience is about emotions, but in stock markets we have this notion of market sentiment, okay? And so a lot of stock traders will say, oh, just it's the market sentiment, people don't feel so confident, or they don't feel so good about that particular stock, so it's gone down in value. Well, why don't people feel good about the stock? Oftentimes it's to do just with this perceived emotion around how well is the company doing in real terms. And actually that emotion often reflects very practically onto a company. So if I say to you, name like Apple, chances are you're feeling that Apple is not really as good as it was when Steve Jobs was around. And actually that sort of maps onto Apple's performance. But if I say to you a name like Uber, you'd say like that's doing really great. It's like doing really well because it's growing. Similar with Tesla. Even with Facebook constantly growing. The sentiment is quite good there. Whereas if I say Google, it's like having some struggles, and so on. We know of that. And that's creating that sentiment. So the real value, therefore, of the end offering is really driven around this sentiment and the emotion the customers have. So Steve Jobs wasn't actually well liked, that's true, but Apple was. So I was talking about Apple, not Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs knew very well what he was doing there to make Apple a liked company, to grow this loyalty and advocacy in a natural way, versus hate Steve Jobs all day long. As long as you like Apple, he's happy. I'm just going to go back to the questions because I got a bunch of questions in and I didn't answer them yet. So I talked about how to talked about the price and how we sort of set the prices. Eva's saying, if your product is not selling, how do you work out which bit isn't working? This is a very good question. Again, design thinking comes into this, where we have to really plot out the customer life cycle and say, okay, hold on a second. If we've got 10 people coming into this funnel, into this flow of awareness, research, comparison, selection, purchase, if we drive 10 people into it and 10 people purchase, but then they go into experience and they drop off, you know that they're suffering in the experience bit. They're suffering in the experience bit. And you're not going to have natural growth off the back of loyalty and advocacy, because how the hell can people become loyal to an experience that was broken? If you drive a load of people into a site to kind of like drive awareness about it, or like, let's say an advert, you run an advert and nobody wants to watch it, then you just know up there, like, there is no match. What you produced in the awareness realm is broken. So you want to drive this in a natural way to say, okay, awareness is working. If we drive 10 people into this awareness, it's working, cool. We can keep that, that's check. Then we make sure that when they're researching, that's check, that's good, and they're not dropping off, and so on. And then you design the experience and so on. So that's how that's measured and calculated. And you really want to make sure that works before you drive any sort of big push for marketing and sales of something that doesn't really work down the stream. So Will Painter is saying communication is key for targeting your audience. If you want them to become advocates, the brand needs to be associated with a certain aspiration, experience, thoughts. Yeah, so experience, but experience comes after these 4 steps of the user's awareness, research, comparison, selection. Then when people purchase, they'll go into the experience. So they can't even get to the experience until you've designed all these previous steps. And most startups that I ever speak to, they don't have a first clue about this, and they really sort of start scratching their heads after I speak to them about this. They start scratching their heads going, oh my god, we spent like 12 months designing the experience, but we have no idea how we're going to raise awareness of our offering at all. And therefore, no matter how good our experience is, if nobody ever comes to it, they will never know how good it is. And so Abdul is asking, what about creating awareness on social media and landing pages to get an idea of how people perceive you while you're still researching and or developing your product? This is very valid, but you want to do this in experiments. This is why design thinking is run off the back of experiments, concerted efforts to say you put something up as an offer, a homepage that's just making a promise of something, and you want to see if people are willing to subscribe to that, and if they dig it, quote unquote. The downside of this approach is that you might create conversions at this sort of like, I can put up a homepage and say, I'm going to sell you a kilo of gold at £1 sterling. There's theoretically loads of people going to sign up to that, but I'm never going to be really able to fulfill that promise, right? So yes, I'll drive a lot of potentially subscriptions off the back of this, but what then? It's like I just basically conned people into this. So you want to, what I'm saying overall here is that the consistent design throughout the all 6 areas of business will give you good growth, natural growth. And it's always happened. I've not believed this. Every time I worked with clients, I don't really, deep down, I don't really believe this will work. But every time I've done it, it's worked massively. One of my clients has seen 15-fold growth over 2 years in their in retention rates compared with growth rates of users. So the user growth rate has gone up 5 times, retention rates have gone up by 3.5 times. So 3.5 times 5 is basically more than 15 times growth. So applying design thinking across all these areas always generates these many-fold increases in growth, okay, without actually us sort of consciously really thinking about growth as the output. We're always thinking about making sure that we're adding value to the customer and user at every stage, and that we're helping them get through this whole life cycle in the best experientially possible way. Quickest, nicest, funnest, most entertaining, most different, etc. So that's answer to that question. And then so there is an experiential sentiment in even the publicly sold shares, right? Where you just know the feel of the company, and that has a knock-on effect on the price. Why? Because the company at that given point in time is not designing the nicest experience. If Toyota has a scandal, like, check this out. If Toyota has a scandal where 100,000 of their cars are potentially killing people down the road because the throttle gets stuck and people develop 100 miles per hour speeds down the road, that's going to kill the share price of Toyota. Why? Because the product is broken. And if if Apple puts out the next iPhone equivalent in terms of appeal and relevance of a product, that's going to drive the share price up, because the sentiment around it is going to be, yeah, Apple has got another hit product. So again, I'm making this point. Think about the sales force that following companies have used to grow, sales or even marketing. Apple, Facebook, Twitter, Airbnb, Tesla. The answer is none. No salespeople, no marketing really. They just created an amazing product. They got people, systems, innovation, and product right. The money's followed, and they raised the money off the back of that. And growth is a natural outcome. Chobani yogurt is the other one. There's like, growth is not an issue. It's a subsequent output of extremely well-designed previous stages. So anyone got any more questions around growth? So really, if you're looking for quick fixes around growth, they can always be applied, but most of the time it's very hard work for percentage increments. With design thinking, it's still work across the board, but because it compounds against people, systems, innovation, products, money, all those things compound, and you end up getting manifold output and growth naturally without actually necessarily even designing for growth. You're designing for people to love every stage, every aspect of the business, and every stage of the customer life cycle. Every time I've spoken to startups about this, it's created a massive mental shift and refocus to help them actually stop spending so much time on designing the experience, or thinking that somehow salespeople are going to drive their company into a unicorn, where really the biggest unicorns in recent years, certainly I can't speak for unicorns of the times past, haven't even had any sales force. Why? Because it's just naturally growing, because it's well designed up front. So Abdul saying, Jason, for me, design thinking, for the small amount of time I've been exposed to it, is amalgamation of scientific experiments and processes, understanding of psychological things and so on. I can't read the rest of this if there is more. In design thinking, we marry up the logical and emotional minds. But 95% of decisions people make are emotionally, subconsciously driven. So in design thinking, we acknowledge this. We acknowledge this, and we don't just kind of brush it under the carpet. It's like, oh, that's just the emotional thing. It's like it's a thing that these kind of like emotional people have. It's like some of the most richest people on the planet will throw a tantrum around the fact that their fork has been served in a slightly wrong angle on the table for $100,000 dinner that a restaurant is selling. If you can fix that, go for it, because selling $100,000 dinner is a very, very profitable business. So this is, emotions are crucial, more important than the logical side of things, but you want to make sure that logical is all checked off and then it makes sense. Because look, if nobody is aware of your product, it doesn't matter how good the experience is, you won't sell it. And if you raise a lot of awareness around a product that's a crappy experience, people are going to fall out, they're going to hate your thing, and then you're going to drive that negative emotion. Is the worst thing you can ever do. How do you know what is going to be a good brand image product without having to test every idea you have? You don't. You have to test it all. That's why testing in design is like a continuous thing. Right now, look, let me ask, here's a question. I can run a quick test here. Tap on the emotion that you feel right now off the back of this overall talk that I've given. Honestly, give me an emotional feedback on this. Just tap the right emotion, whether you like it or dislike it or hate it, please. So Eva's giving me a thumbs up. Anyone else? Anyone else? Tap your feedback for me, please. Yeah. So I got 2 thumbs up from Abdul. I got thumbs up and wow from Diana, and some wows from Eva. There you go. I've just run a bit of like a feedback loop on this talk. Sometimes you just get people not feeding anything back. This is kind of, to me, the worst thing. Like, I always feel queasy about people not saying anything because they're walking away without any emotion. They're just kind of like, I'm not really sure really what I heard here. Those are the people that I can't really read well because I don't really know what they're thinking, and I feel their failure of I haven't satisfied them. Okay. So Will is asking that's an expensive dinner. What's the name of a restaurant? The point here was that, like, if we're targeting billionaires and we're offering them a £10 burger, they will say, like, I don't eat £10 burgers. I want £1,000 burgers. I want £10,000 burgers. I want to have something that I've never had. Okay, and so you will theoretically never really sell a £10 burger to a billionaire because they want something that's much more expensive than that. So thanks, Will, for your kind comment. If there's any more questions, I'm happy to take another few minutes and start wrapping this up. Overall message from me is applying design thinking to people, systems, innovation, products, and money is always going to yield exponential growth, literally. And every time we've done this with my clients, it's done that. With Rolly, applying design thinking to every single aspect of Rolly has now caused them to have their products sold across Apple stores worldwide. What ends up happening then is that when you have this sort of brand loyalty and affinity and advocacy, for example, with this kind of big partner that Rolly have generated, that ends up driving growth naturally, right? Because now suddenly more people become aware of Rolly products, and it just kind of drives it back into customer life cycle. And you really can't stop this machine from becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy of growth and sustainable growth, because you've designed it well across the board. Abdul's asking who came up with DT, design thinking, and how new is it? So design thinking is really popularized through Stanford School of Design. So Stanford is the big university that many people know of in US, one of the best in the world. And they came up with design thinking as a framework of thinking. They've somewhat popularized it. IDEO is another company that kind of promotes this around, But design thinking as a concept has been around for a long time. The issue is that people don't apply it. People like to make their own sort of struggles, right? People are stuck in their own struggles, like I'm carving this product out, not really having an idea as to who they're targeting. So when I say to you, like, build a great product first, and then this growth is going to reflect itself later on as a natural thing, that building a great product doesn't happen in a shed. You just sit in the shed and you carve away. It doesn't happen like that. You still have to be empathetic to people. People are first. You have to know who you're serving. Who is it that you like? Why are you serving them? What's their context? You have to know a lot about the customer before you carve a product out. And so to build a great product isn't just something quick, that just gets churned out overnight. It just isn't. It isn't. No amazing product was ever built overnight. So apply design thinking and all this like understanding of cognitive aspects and empathizing with people first is absolutely critical to ensure that you can design a nice product and that it makes sense from a monetary side and so on. And so you'll hear design thinking kind of being experimented with at big corporations, little here, little there for innovation purposes, coming up with new ideas. What they're really failing at is to understand this whole thing that I'm saying here, which is that, like, yes, you can apply design thinking to just the product, or just the systems, or just the innovation, or just the money. And you know what? You're going to have this kind of growth hack approach to it, outcome that it's going to drive some percentage increments upwards, even if that, because you realize that, like, let's say you want to change the business model in a business, you realize, oh, actually that requires new systems to be put into place. And then you go like, oh, well, actually this was a good idea here. It seemed like a good idea, but this side doesn't allow us to do that. So like, actually it's broken. And then if people just innovate on the business model side without taking all this into account, they quickly prove that their ideas are wrong, and then they blame design thinking on it, whereas actually it's not being applied holistically. One of the big aspects of design thinking is it needs to be applied holistically across the business. So often a time companies will do this wrong and then blame the method versus blaming themselves for not really understanding how this is done. And this is why I'm talking about this, so that like the next time when you meet a growth hacker who is saying, just change the wording on your emails and so on, that's fine. They might be driving your awareness up, but they don't know how to improve your experience necessarily to actually drive the natural loyalty and advocacy. So at this point, I'm going to thank you once again for watching this, and thanks for all your questions, all relevant, all good. I hope I've answered them in some sort of valuable way. Please feel free to actually ask questions afterwards as well, and this is going to get repurposed for YouTube afterwards. Thank you very much for listening, and this actually closes off my entire lecture set, let's say, on the business. I introduced design thinking in the first one. I spoke about people in the second one. Spoke about systems. Spoke about information, innovation, products, money, and now growth. I might do another one just to kind of holistically wrap it around. But right now I'm feeling that might be a little bit of an overkill. But who knows? I'll see next week. I'm looking for suggestions actually from you as to what else you would want to hear from me. My idea was to actually now start drilling deeper into specifics. So for example, on people's side, we can start talking about how to really identify the customers, or how to design a community that really works, or how to design employee experiences that really kind of grow company and so on. And so on. So we can drill into the depths of each aspect. This has just been an overview. I'm not really talking about how to do these things, just kind of talking about overall notions, really. So thank you very much for listening, and see you next week. Bye.